"I'm going to torment you all day." What jealous father, 42, told the mother of his children before sinking his teeth into her face in vicious attack after she came home from a night out. A jealous father told the mother of his children he would torment her all day before he sunk his teeth into her face in a vicious attack. Craig Yates, 42, bundled Hayley O'Hara to the floor, then pinned her down after she returned home from a night out, a court heard. During the savage 1 a.m. assault, the parent of 6 grabbed Miss O'Hara by the throat, slapped her bottom and shoved material into her mouth so could barely breathe. She temporarily blacked out during the attack and she fled her family home the following day. Miss O'Hara suffered bruising to both sides of her mouth plus a bite mark on her left cheek as well as bruising to the side of her right thigh, left buttock and wrists. Forklift truck driver Yates, from Radcliffe, near Bury, Greater Manchester, was arrested after his mother found him at a nearby golf course following a bungled attempt to take his own life. 10 empty cans of lager were later found at the family house. Police discovered Yates had been previously convicted of another assault against Miss O'Hara in 2016 when she came in at 1 a.m. after celebrating New Year's Eve in Bolton with a friend. At Minshaw Street Crown Court this week, Manchester, he admitted assault occasioning actual bodily harm and pleaded, "I have been a disgrace to my family and I am sorry." But in a statement Miss O'Hara said, "I couldn't believe what he has done. I'm not sure if I could trust him now, especially around the children." Yates was jailed for 14 months and was banned from contacting Miss O'Hara for life. Sentencing him, Judge Angela Neild said, "It is clear you have a significant problem with your personal relationships and domestic violence." There were times when these courts regarded assaults within a relationship with the defendant less serious than assaults against others. This is not the case now. The consequences of domestic violence are far more far-reaching than consequences of other types of assault. The long-lasting effect impacts not only on the complainant, who has not only been affected in the physical sense but more in the emotional and psychological sense. You must also consider the impact on those children. You have an appalling record. The court heard father of 6. Yates fathered 2 children with Miss O'Hara but had previously split up following violent rows only to get back together. Prosecutor Duncan Wilcox said, "They were in an on-off relationship since 2014. On Friday 9 February the complainant went out for the evening with a friend. She left the defendant in charge of their 2 children. He was essentially babysitting whilst she was out. Whilst she was out she began receiving phone calls from the defendant. She arrived home at 1:30 am. As she opened the door the defendant grabbed her, held her and threw her to the floor, and she blacked out. When she came round the defendant was shouting at her saying, "You're a liar." The defendant then lunged at her and bit her on the cheek. He then took her mobile phone and her door key away from her. She did make a dash for the back door, but he grabbed her by the throat and threw her to the floor and ended up sitting on top of her, making it difficult for her to breathe. After a struggle the complainant managed to get away, but the defendant grabbed her leg and slapped her buttock, in her words, "really hard." She managed to get to the bedroom, but he threw her down on bed and began to bite her face and restrained her hands, biting her on the lip and cheek. At that stage the defendant began to shove his fingers into her mouth. He shoved a piece of material into her mouth also. She managed to escape from the defendant running for the bathroom. At that point the defendant grabbed her and pulled her back onto the bed and again started shoving items into her mouth. The complainant began to fall asleep because the defendant was sitting on top of her, making it difficult for her to breathe. He then said to her, "I'm going to torment you all day long." She began to have a panic attack and the defendant changed completely. He left the room and went to look after their 2-year-old son. She managed later that afternoon to leave the address and she went to the hospital where she received treatment for her injuries. In mitigation, a defense counsel David Bruce said, "The defendant is extremely upset and distressed. He has 6 children and is hard-working. He is an extremely dedicated and good father and expresses his remorse. He accepts he needs help. He has got support from his family. This defendant has done wrong and he recognizes that and expresses remorse. He has had little relation with his son since that evening. He accepts the incident lasted for a significant period of time. He wants to change. He wants to get some help to assess his problems.